Welcome to today's webinar here for the RuFES Action Network. My name is Renee Bryce Laporte, and we are doing our webinar today on car repair and car donation as an earn it strategy. This is a time of year that might be good for us to talk about that, we felt, and so here we're addressing it today. Okay, this is one in a series of Rural Family Economic Success webinars. They are open to anyone in the RuFES Action Network and your colleagues and your friends and to anyone else who wants to participate. As of yesterday, more than 50 groups had registered for this webinar. Actually, I think as of about an hour ago, there were 59 groups that were 59 people who had registered for this webinar, and some of those folks who are represented will represent groups. So we are looking forward to a pretty good crowd here for this webinar. Each and every one of our webinars is recorded and is archived so that you and others can watch and listen at your leisure. We have a website that we will send to you, so web address rather, that we'll send to you so that you can go ahead and watch this or watch and listen and advise others to watch and listen. Okay, today's topic, access to reliable transportation. It's an essential part of holding a job or getting to a job training program. Keeping people active and productive, it very much depends on reliable transportation, and it's certainly more true in rural areas. Due to the lack of public transportation options in rural areas, the ideal option for any rural working family is ownership of a new or late model car. Now, of course, we know that that's not always possible for everyone, particularly for low and moderate income people. So the most realistic option for some folks is a repair of a car that they already own, or for them to obtain an affordable used car so that, again, they may get to services that they need, that they can get to classes, to job training, and certainly to jobs themselves. Now, today's presenters will cover the following three issues. One, we'll have an introduction to the Rural Transportation Challenge. Two, we're going to show you a model of a very good car repair program, and also we're going to show you a model of a very successful car donation program. These are some of the ways, again, that we keep people in cars and keep them getting to work and to classes and job training. So, as we do each time that we have a webinar, we want to provide you with a few notes on participation. For now, we have all of you who are listeners, participants there, muted. And this prevents us from being disturbed by you putting us on hold and getting music, or if your dog is barking, your child is crying, anything that might disturb the rest of the listeners' enjoyment of the webinar. Clarifying questions. Now, you will see that you have in your webinar control panel a little questions box. During the presentations, if any of the presenters say something that you just don't get, please go ahead and type in your question and send it. I'll see the question, and we'll try to find the right time to pose the question to the presenters. Now, if you have a larger, more cosmic question, we have plotted out the schedule here so that there'll be sufficient Q&A time at the end of the presentation. So after the presentations during the last half hour or so, we're going to have time for more questions. In that case, you can virtually raise your hand. Now, again, in your webinar box, there's a little hand icon in your control panel, and I'll see it, and I'll call on people in turn, and you will magically be unmuted when I call on you. And you can also just type in a question in the questions box if you prefer, or you just don't want to speak out loud. We can handle it that way as well. So you can answer questions verbally or answer them in, or excuse me, propose questions verbally or propose them in written form. Okay, questions, technical questions. If you have any technical problems while you're listening to the webinar and are trying to get something fixed here, you go ahead and use your questions box in your webinar panel. If you're having technical problems or you want to know how to do something, or if it's really bad, you can call Elsa Noterman, who's on staff here, and you can reach her at elsa.noterman@aspeninst.org. That's ELSA.NOTERMAN at aspeninst, ASPENINST.org, or you can call Elsa. You can call her at 736-5833. 736-5833, and she's there as we speak. Okay, now today's presenters. We have three presenters for you today in addition to me. First one will be John Molinaro, who's the co-director here at the Aspen Institute Community Strategies Group. John will be followed by Don Wake, who's the director of the Morrow County Job and Family Services in Mount Gilead, Ohio. And he'll be followed by Barbara Bays, the executive director of Good News Mountaineer Garage in Charleston, West Virginia. Okay, now today's objectives. At the end of today's transportation webinar, you should have a few things in hand. You should have a better understanding of transportation challenges and opportunities in rural areas. 2, you should learn about an inspiring model of a car repair program in Ohio. Hear about a successful car donation program in rural West Virginia. And most importantly, you can have an idea of how your organization might tackle transportation challenges in your own community. And we've asked the presenters to present in a way that you will find out more about what they're doing, but do so in a way that will give you some hints as to how you might approach this subject in your own community. Okay, now, anytime that we do one of these webinars, it's really built on 3 family-focused goals that we've built along with the NEA Casey Foundation. The first one is Earn It. Helping families earn it means working families earn a living that allows them to survive, thrive, and raise their children in their own communities. Keep It. Helping working families have access to and make good choices that safeguard their family income and lower their cost of living, forging stable and predictable financial lives. And finally, Grow It. Growing it means working families accumulate and maintain assets that gain value and advance family and community prosperity over time. It generally meaning money, funds. Okay, today's framework focus will be on Earn It, since we're helping people get to work to earn more money. Meaning working families earn a living that allows them to survive, thrive, and raise their children in their community. Now, under the Earn It, Keep It, Grow It focus, there are a few specific family-focused goals. In this case, car repair and purchase programs target this family-focused goal, that workers have a reliable, affordable, and efficient means of transportation to get to their jobs. Okay, now without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to John Molinaro, our co-director here, for an introduction to rural transportation challenges and opportunities. John, take it away.
Thanks so much, Renee. Good afternoon, folks, or good morning if you're joining us from the West Coast. I'm going to talk a little bit about rural transportation challenges and opportunities, many of which are probably not very new to you if you're working out there with families who are facing tough struggles in their lives. Next slide, please, Renee. Thank you. So the challenge for working families is really getting families to work and getting families to life, which can really be quite complicated in rural America. Rural families travel much longer distances than urban families do on average. Typical rural family that owns a car puts 20 to 25% more miles on the car than the national average each year. That means that folks in urban areas are putting a bit less than that national average on their cars. So rural families are traveling quite a bit more. And when you get in a rural community, work, child care, the services that you need to support your life, schools, shopping, can be in very different places. They may not be in the same communities. You may have to go quite some distance to get the things that you need in order to have a stable and successful family life. Plus, in rural areas, public transportation is really very seldom a workable option for communities and particularly for families that are trying to get to work. And of course, those of you who've looked at the automobile sales and financing system and some of the nasty tricks that suck dollars out of low-income families' pockets know that automobile sales and financing doesn't really work well for most low-income families. The dealers, there are many dealers out there whose profit model is really set up on taking every penny they can out of a low-income person's pocket, whether or not that car they're selling is worth what they're paying. Next slide, please. So a reliable vehicle is absolutely critical for most rural families. The Brookings Institute, which has studied the relationship between transportation and the economic success of low-income families, has quoted as saying that for most low-income families, the shortest distance between unemployment is a job and a job is a car. Well, if owning a reliable personal automobile is the only practical transportation option for almost any middle-class family in America, why would we be surprised that the same is true for low-income families? The car is just as important, and having that be a reliable car is absolutely critical. Some of the benefits of a reliable vehicle for a low-income family. Reliable vehicles are really a driving force for family self-sufficiency. It reduces dependency. There are some studies that show that a reliable car can reduce welfare. That's TANF is the federal acronym for welfare. Your state may call it something besides temporary assistance for needy families. But a reliable car in some studies has reduced TANF recidivism by up to half. Reliable transportation is also shown to increase the quality of the jobs that people hold. It's easier for people to hang on to a job, to get that really good employment record, to advance in a career, and to accept jobs that might be a little bit less conveniently located but have much better quality, better wages, better benefits, if they've got a reliable way of getting there, or they've got more job opportunities because they can travel a little farther. Because of that, workers with a reliable car in a number of studies have been shown to earn higher wages. That tends to range from about 15% to 25% more than workers whose cars are not as reliable. So how do you meet this challenge? Well, the Cadillac solution, the high-end solution for helping a low-income family get to work and get to life, is to help them purchase a new or late model cars. And many of you who may have participated in one of our Family Economic Success Institutes may have actually heard about, and you've probably heard about, car purchase programs focused on those late model cars. They are really great programs. But that's not an option for all consumers. In fact, it's not an option for many of the folks that really need transportation. And public transit doesn't work so well. Again, jobs, housing, services, shopping are seldom really centralized in rural areas. So it's really hard to make rural transit work for work, and it's really hard to make rural transit work for life. The hours of public transportation in rural areas, because of the high costs and of offering rural transit, tend not to be the hours that people work. The rural transit services tend to start a little later in the day than those in big cities. They tend to end a little earlier. They don't work well for shift work in most cases. So it's just really tough to make transit work. And when you really start looking at the cost of the trips made by families who rely on transit in rural areas, and you include all the public subsidies of the transit, plus what they're paying out of their pocket as a fare for that transit, the true cost is often higher than it would cost to put that family in and keep that family in a reliable private automobile. So there are really three major types of programs that help families get in or stay in an affordable and reliable and efficient auto. There are car purchase programs. We're not going to talk about those today in depth. There are car donation programs. And sometimes with car donation programs, often there's a purchase price, but the difference is that that's subsidized by the donation. So when I refer to a donation program, I'm not saying that someone isn't necessarily going to have to pay something for that car, but it's not like buying a new or a late model car. And there are car repair programs, and those are programs that try to keep that car that the person already has on the road. So why are car ownership programs good? Well, a car purchase program tends to focus on a reliable, efficient, late model car. And because they're late model, financing is cheaper. Operating costs tend to be cheaper because they tend to be fuel efficient. Repair costs make them more are lower because they're newer, make them more affordable, and they may actually have some warranty left on them. And so these are the Cadillac programs, but they really only work for a very limited slice of low-income families. Credit problems disqualify some families. Not having enough income to make the car payments on even a really good deal on a late model or new car might keep other families from getting into the car purchase. The result is that with car purchase programs, only about 1 family in 8 qualify nationwide. So car donation programs lower that cost of entry. They do that by accepting used car donations, inspecting and repairing the cars, providing those cars at low cost or at no cost to families who need them. And some car donation programs even warranty the major systems in the car to make sure that that car is going to last that person for a while and continue to get them to work into life. Car repair programs are a really important option too for some different reasons. Many families really already have cars, and if you can keep those cars running and running well, you can keep those families working. Car repair programs can cost less upfront and can often tap into available resources. Almost all welfare programs provide some kind of car repair funding, and so in many states it's possible to tap into those dollars to support a car repair program. Plus, there are a lot of families that got trapped by some of these unscrupulous car dealers, and they're in cars that aren't very reliable, but they're still paying for them, and they're going to be paying for them for a while. Well, if you try to move them into a better car, it can leave them stuck with debt for a car they no longer own. If they walk away from that car and it's repossessed, it can hurt their credit rating, putting them in an even deeper hole. So if you can help them keep that car on the road until it's paid for, it can make a big difference in their life long term. And again, remember, car repair is a viable alternative for many families that have cars, in part because only 1 in 8 families qualifies for car purchase programs, so it's harder to move them into families into those cars that they have to buy than it is for to keep them in one they already have many times. So here are a few resources that I'd like to share about car purchase and car repair programs. Every one of these resources will be on the website that we'll send to you, a link to you about after this webinar. So don't feel like you have to scribble notes real quickly here, but just to highlight, the Annie Casey Foundation, who's sponsoring this webinar and much of our work around rural family economic success, has 2 great resources, one on affordable car ownership programs, transporting families toward financial stability and success. Very good resource on that. And they have a DVD to help educate people on these issues called Pursuit of the Dream, Cars and Jobs in America. Very good resources. You'll be hearing more about from Don Wake about Morrow County's Wheels to Work program, and there's some information from that in terms of the Innovation Award that they received that's available online. And then I mentioned that the car finance system doesn't work real well for low-income folks, and there's a really great program, publication by one of our sister programs here at Aspen that talks about car financing and why it doesn't work well for rural families and some of the big abuses in the car financing system that might be that you might find to be useful if you want to talk to others about this topic, or you're not up to speed on the topic yourself. So I urge you to consider this link if you're interested in that. So that covers what I'm going to talk about here today. I'll turn it back to Renee to introduce Don.
Thank you very much, John. And as he mentioned, the resources that are there will be posted, and they'll be up by first thing tomorrow, though the devilish part of me likes to imagine everyone scribbling madly. We're not going to really put you through all of that. So let me go on and introduce my friend, Don Wake, who, as stated before, is the director of the Morrow County Job and Family Services, to talk about their innovative car repair program. Don, are you there?
I am, and thank you. We're always excited to share about our program. We think it's a great program, and I'd like to start today by just sharing a little bit about Morrow County. We are a county, a small rural county. We're located north of Columbus, Ohio, about 60 miles. And interesting fact about our county is that the 2000 census made us the very center of the population in Ohio, and so they put a little plaque down in our courthouse. Our county, however, is a poor county in that we have little to no industry or retail. And so our county struggles, its budget every year struggles because there are little or few resources for us to tap into to draw on tax receipts. And as a result of having little industry or retail, people have to travel outside of our county to both shop and to work. As John mentioned, transportation is critical for those who live in rural counties, and in Morrow County it is especially critical. If you live in our county, you have a 90% chance that you are driving to get whatever you need, whether it's food or work or church or play or school. You're going to drive to get it if you live in Morrow County. Next slide. In Morrow County, Job and Family Services is the TANF agency. That's the Temporary Assistance to Needy Families, the welfare program, federal program. And we do administer that program. And in Ohio, we have a great deal of flexibility because of the structure of the state of Ohio. We're county administered and state supervised, and so our agency really operates under the authority of the county commissioners, and they work very well with us, as you'll see in my presentation today. As an agency, Morrow County Job and Family administers over 100 different programs with over 40 different streams of funding. A challenge for us is how do we get into each of those streams, because they all come with their own strings and their own limitations. How do we get into those streams to help people with transportation? And I had some thoughts as we began to look at transportation in Ohio and in Morrow County specifically. Our agency works with many who are low income and from many different aspects. We are a combined agency. We administer the child welfare programs, we administer the workforce investment programs, the child support programs, and all of the public assistance programs, including food stamps, the SNAP program, OWF, which is Ohio's cash assistance program, and OWF stands for Ohio Works First. So we administer all of those separate programs, and in addition to those 4 major program areas, as Director of the Job and Family, I'm also the Director of the Morrow County Transportation Collaborative, which is a rural transportation system primarily focusing on Medicaid transportation, getting folks who are on Medicaid to their doctor's appointments and medical appointments. And so as we looked at the needs in Morrow County, we began to discuss and wonder what it is we can do to help our families. And I always think it's good for us to consider what are the kind of topics that we need to talk about when developing a program. And there are several questions that people should consider. What the need is, and if there is a need, how do I determine that? I encourage people considering working with any kind of program, whether it's a transportation or other program to serve the disadvantaged, to certainly have discussions with local social service agencies, charitable agencies, food pantries, churches. Survey your community and your community leaders, as well as the citizens. Checking census data, checking with local colleges and universities for any research or studies they may have. In our case, Ohio State University does a great job of profiling communities and putting out information. And then just your personal experience. As you'll see later in my presentation, our personal experience with transportation in providing cars and repairs for families wasn't a good experience under the old way of doing business. And I'll discuss that in a little bit. how we came about starting our program is that, next slide, it started because, well, since welfare reform in the mid-90s, I need to go to the next one. I'm going to skip that. Since welfare reform started in the mid-90s, Morrow County did provide transportation assistance for the working poor. We helped people purchase vehicles as well as repair vehicles, and we did all of that with TANF funds. It does allow for the purchase as well as the repair. The problem is there are limitations. So, for example, in purchasing a vehicle, we had to cap it at $1,500. Now, you can't buy a very good car for $1,500. And the difficulty was, once you expended that $1,500, you had exhausted your assistance for that year, and we couldn't then help you keep that car running. And a $1,500 car most certainly is going to need repairs. We also did repair for vehicles, but we found some challenges there. And so, and those challenges primarily were that local repair shops quickly find out how much you're willing to spend or what your limits are. And oftentimes our quotes came back, regardless of what the repair was that the client identified. The service shop always seemed to be able to identify repairs that needed to go up to that limit. And so the program wasn't as successful as we had hoped because of fiscal limitations and the rules around spending budgets and streams of funding. We looked for other solutions. Next slide. And really it started in 2004 when a team from Morrow County attended a Rural Economic Family Success Conference in Clark County, Nevada. And it was at that conference that we heard about the Jumpstart program, and pardon the pun, but it really jumped out at us. It was something that just really is an outstanding program, and it is a car purchase program, and we were very, very interested and very excited about it. So as our team returned to Morrow County, we began networking, meeting with partners about how to better address the transportation needs of a rural county. Next slide. Some of the issues that we uncovered as we did our research, we found out that in our county we are first in the state in the number of our citizens that drive outside of our county to work. We also found out that we were among the highest in the county in terms of the way our population is spread throughout our county. 90% of our citizens live on a country road outside of a town or a village. And so in a place where there's really no public transportation, the Transportation Collaborative has never been able to function as a public transportation system with typical routes and that type of thing. And so the only thing that was available, no public transportation, was MCTC. Seniors, the seniors organization provides some transportation, but they focus only on seniors. The veterans organization provides some transportation, but focus only on vets. So that leaves a large portion of our population without transportation. Another interesting fact about our county was that we discovered that our population was aging at a rate double of that of surrounding counties. And so we had folks moving into those senior years very, very quickly. And they also have needs that even the seniors were not able to provide. Next slide. In 2006, after having heard about the Jumpstart program and doing some of our research, we had an opportunity to apply for a grant. We did, but didn't receive the grant. And so we still felt that there was a tremendous need and some action needed to take place. So we brainstormed some more, and we came up with the idea that, well, let's fix cars more efficiently and cost effectively. And let's start a service shop. Now, it's true, as John mentioned, TANF can pay for car repairs. The difficulty is that when I send a client to the local repair shop, I have to pay for the labor and the parts to repair his car. If I bring that service inside, then the labor becomes an administrative cost to me, and it's only the parts that I have to charge against the client's account. That means that I can put a lot more money toward repairing a car if I'm doing it myself versus sending people out to local repair shops. So we began the process of starting a service shop, a mechanical repair shop. At first we couldn't locate a building. We finally were offered a space in the county engineer's building on a temporary basis. So we started an old building in the county fairground. And by the end of 2006, we had located a facility, and actually you can see a picture of it in the upper right-hand corner, an old tractor repair facility that became available for purchase. Next slide. So our goal was to serve the working poor, and that was primarily and initially those folks who were eligible for our Prevention, Retention, and Contingency, or PRC program. Now that is TANF and those are dollars that are temporary, one-time dollars that are designed to keep people off of cash assistance and focused on keeping families working and families together. And so those were the funds that we were going to tap into to actually do the car repairs. And it was those clients who were 200% of poverty or lower that we were focusing on. We quickly expanded the program to serve other populations. And part of the reason for doing that was there were others who did have a need, and by spreading it through various programs, we felt we ensured the sustainability of the repair shop. So if I move to the next slide, the populations that we serve through our program are the TANF PRC, 200% of poverty or less. We also serve a group of folks that are called the FSET in Ohio. That's Food Stamp Employment and Training Families. These are folks who get food stamps but have a work or training requirement. And to ensure that they get to that work or training, we can repair their car. OWF, the Ohio Works First Cash Assistance, we work with them. Our Family and Children Services. This is where our adult protective worker who works with senior citizens and also our child protective workers are. And in order to serve families, if transportation is an obstacle to keeping a family together, then we do car repairs. Child support, if an obligor has a seek work order, then and transportation is an obstacle, we will assist them. And an interesting group that we were able to work with is the elderly and the disabled and the employed who don't fit into any other category. And as a result of spreading out these funding areas, we were able to touch every area of our quadruple combined agency, all major programs, and thus ensure some sustainability. So if we can move on to the next slide. Our service shop started out with a supervisor, a lead mechanic, and an assistant mechanic. We quickly added a second mechanic, and at first we had 4. In Ohio, we have had severe budget cuts. We have lost over 30% of our funding, and so I am down to 2 mechanics, 1 a lead and 1 an assistant, and I am down to 1 supervisor who I actually contract for. We did do other expansions, and those are still operating. We are functioning as a website. That is a work experience placement site, and that is for those folks on cash assistance who have a work requirement. They're placed at various locations for work experience, and we made our shop available for placement of those folks, and then also a youth training site. Now, the youth training site, and if we go to the next slide, is really the important one for us, because it's that program that allows us to do a lot more than what we had initially designed the program for, reaching families that usually fall through the cracks, such as senior citizens. A testimonial you'll see here, if we could go to the next slide, and another testimonial, and next slide. We have been very fortunate to have folks come back and are appreciative of the program. Since our inception on July 1 of 2006, we've repaired over 290 vehicles under PRC with an average cost of $209. Prior to that, the average cost was $353, so almost a 50% savings for us. Our surveys show that 84% are still working, and when I ran these numbers again just recently for this webinar, they are still holding the same as what they were back 3 years ago. And we have done 155 youth or FSET food stamp repaired vehicles. Next slide, please. The neat thing here is that we work in tandem with the Transportation Collaborative. We have an MOU with them. And so when a person comes in to repair a car, they often are older cars. And we do have to make some judgment calls, but most of them, if we can put them back out on the road for under the cap of $500 in parts, and we can swap engines and transmissions for $500. So if we can put them back on the road for $500 and the vehicle is safe, then we do that. A couple of other quick things that they have to do. They have to own the car. It has to be titled to them, and they have to have insurance. Because we reduced the per vehicle cost, we've saved money for both. Now, the youth program is really the neat, and that was the next slide, and you can go to that. And what's neat about it is that we are taking in 1 to 2 youth at a time. We encourage them to stay for 24 months. Several of them have completed the program in less than 24 months. We do provide them with a stipend or a weekly salary. We provide them with classroom and on-the-job training. We encourage them to work toward their automotive service excellence, their ASE certification. And because each youth comes as a trainee, they have an individual training account. The interesting thing here is that I can pull in a senior citizen. I can work on their car with my youth trainee supervised by a qualified mechanic. I can actually purchase the part to put on the car with their ITA funds. And a senior citizen who wants to stay independent, driving to their own doctor's appointment, is able to do that. We also do this for those who are falling through the PRC TANF crack. They're employed, need to keep working, but they don't qualify for any other program. The youth can repair that car for them. If we could go on to the next slide. Wheels to Work offers low-cost contracts to other county vehicles, and this was another feature of providing sustainability for the program. At those times when business goes down for PRC and the working poor, I contract with the county for the Sheriff's Department, the city, various townships to repair their vehicles, and that has become a very large portion of the business of the service shop. And as you can see, we've repaired nearly 1,500 vehicles under that arrangement. And we've also added a fuel station that saves the county money. So next slide. All of that's a part of producing that sustainability. Lance Jones, who is my mobility manager at our Transportation Collaborative, has estimated that we are saving 50% in repairs for them, and that's savings for other programs that allow them to provide more for their citizens and for their clients. Next program, or slide, please. Many will ask what our startup costs are, and the neat thing here is that we did and were able to get the assistance from our county commissioners. Of course, the sales pitch included the benefit to them, which they immediately saw in repairing county vehicles, and that secured their buy-in. We did have contingency plans. In lieu of buying a building, we could have leased a building, and actually our arrangement with the commissioners is a lease arrangement. But the nice thing is the county owns it. We go in and we can do with the building what we want to do. But that wasn't the deal breaker, so we could have done this program simply by going into a lease, and the startup costs would have been much lower. Next slide, and probably the next couple slides we can go through rather quickly. You can see the cost for the building, the fuel tank, lifts, all of the parts. If I made one mistake on equipment, I should have taken the opportunity when I had the funding to buy some equipment just a little better quality or heavier duty. I've had to already replace some things like my tire machine and balancer. Next slide. We have done some upgrades to the building. We put in an electric generator so that we can work even if the energy is off. We continue to work. We put in a used oil burning furnace. We do oil changes, so we burn our own oil, and therefore we're green. We have secure facilities, so the sheriff was comfortable bringing his cruisers out for repair. And so we did several things to upgrade our facilities. And we are a full-service repair shop. As I said, we can do complete overhauls, swap out engines, swap out transmissions as necessary. And many of the old cars that clients bring in need that kind of work. Our contract rates are $42 per hour, which is well below half of what service shops are. We do oil changes for the $16.99, alignments $35, tile repair for $6, and our parts are provided to our clients at cost, no markup, and no restock fees. Next slide. All of that saves money not only for the working poor, but for our clients as well, our customers, the contracts that we have with the county. Morrow County also was still very interested in the Jump Start. While we didn't get the grant to do it, we wanted to go forward. We do have a fully developed program. We have not done our first car. It seems that the economy simply doesn't cooperate with us, and with unemployment in Ohio as high as it is any place in the country, and with many, many people in our county out of jobs, we just have not been able to justify the Jump Start program. But we do have all of the pieces in place, and we hope to do some vehicles in the future. We have had some donated vehicles which we have turned and passed on to clients, but the vast majority of our work is the vehicle repair, and we are saving clients and keeping them working, and that's what's exciting about our program. And really, that covers the next couple of slides. We do have our partners in place for the Wheels to Work Plus, we call it, which would be our Jump Starter car purchase program. I think that's it. There were challenges, struggles finding the building, getting the commissioner's support. The need is greater than the resources to serve the working poor. The economy has hit us hard here in Ohio, and with the budget cuts, we have reduced, because of the limitations of funding, the number of PRC vehicles we're working. Interesting to note, the county keeps vehicles longer now because of the economy, and so it just about balanced out to where we are doing the same number of repairs now as we were doing before the economy started to dip. Some have asked us, how did this impact local service shops? We honestly did not have the first local service shop complaint, not the first. Conversely, the junkyards and the used parts and the parts dealers love us because we are using them heavily. So where one part of our community lost some business, another part certainly picked up business from us. And we are sustaining our program with $10. That is becoming a challenging prospect. One of the changes we've made in our program to extend the program is that if clients can bring their own parts, and if they can come up with the dollars to buy their own parts, then we still repair their cars, and we're seeing that part of the program really start to grow. And I think that's it.
Yes, it is. Thank you there, Don. And Don has, in addition to his generous presentation here, also shared with you his email address, which is here in the presentation, and then also the website of his agency there in Ohio. Again, when our presentation is posted at the website, you'll be able to access this fairly easily. And I do want to thank Don for his presentation. And actually, there, in addition to Don and Barbara, there actually have been a number of people I've talked to as we've been trying to smarten up on this subject matter, and so thanks to all of them. But with no further ado, I'd actually like to turn things over to my friend Barbara Bays, who runs, we have here Car Purchase, but it's a Car Purchase and Donation Program. Barbara, are you there?
I'm here.
Okie doke. Go right ahead. Your mic.
Okay, you can change the slide. I don't want to look at myself. That's the logo for the Good News Mountaineer Garage. We're a statewide program, and our motto is Donate a Car, Change a Life. Next slide, please. We're a sole agency in the sense that this is all we do. We provide vehicles to low-income families to get to work or training, and sometimes to nonprofits that work with the poor when we get a car that we can't use in our regular program. So simply said, we take your donated vehicle, we repair it, and we give it to a low-income family for transportation to work or training. Next. When this program started, which was in 2001, actually a group of people started organizing in 2000, the state had done a study and found that 1 out of 4 people that were on TANF were there because they did not have transportation. We also had a study conducted about why children in southern West Virginia, which is terribly poor, it's one of the poorest areas in the country, had a low participation rate in Head Start, and we found out it's because of transportation problems. They simply didn't have the means to get their children to the buses in a lot of instances. You know, this is along with most rural transportation needs. More than half of our rural residents live in places where there are minimal transit services or none at all. And add to that rural residents earn 32% less than their urban counterparts. And we also have a higher percentage of people who do not have access to a vehicle, and 15% live in poverty. Next. Next, please. Next slide. Okay. I'm going to do a brief history of how we got started. This was truly a grassroots effort. The head of the State Social Workers Association, the director of the West Virginia Council of Churches, a member of the State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, a newspaper reporter, a retired director of a Chamber of Commerce, and a new car dealership owner got together, and they heard about the Good News Garage in Vermont on a radio show or television show. And they knew this was a big problem in West Virginia, so they said, you know, let's try to do what Good News Garage in Vermont did in West Virginia. Now, I got some statistics about West Virginia that I'd like to share with you. All 55 counties in West Virginia are considered rural. We have one town that hovers with a population of about 50,000. That's our largest population center. It has currently our per capita income is 49th in the nation. Our poverty rate is one of 5 states that has a poverty rate of over 17%. And in 2009, the poverty rate was 19.9 in most rural areas of the state. So take that information and think what a optimistic group of people who decided that we could do this program, operate a donated car program here in this poor state. But they went ahead and we received TANF funds to do a pilot program in 2 counties. And we received some state tax credits to encourage people to donate their cars. We completed our first year and actually gave out 86 cars, and then we opened our garage. A few years later, TANF funding was low, and we operated a Ways to Work program and provided cars to low-wage workers at a reduced rate. And next slide, please. In the next year, based on the successful outcomes of the pilot project we did and some extra funding that the state TANF program had received, they decided to expand our donation program to provide 180 vehicles a year to West Virginia Works customers. West Virginia Works is what we call our TANF work participants here. And we've been doing that program since. We're continuing to do it. And in April 2009, the West Virginia Division of Rehabilitation Services came to us and asked if we could provide vehicles to their clients on the same way we do to the TANF program. Next slide, please. Well, to date, we have provided over 1,200 vehicles to TANF recipients, 60 vehicles to DRS participants, 30 to victims of domestic violence, and those cars are usually not as good as the other ones we provide. We try to have our cars ready to last for 2 years as long as the people treat them, with normal maintenance and care and use them for the purpose that they're intended. And we've been fairly successful with that. But sometimes we get donated cars that are older and not sure that they will last that long, but we provide those to victims of domestic violence who need a car to get on with their lives. Also, this is part of the way that we have increased our partnership with the community and other nonprofit agencies. We occasionally get vehicles that we can't use in our program that we provide to nonprofit agencies. For example, we got a broadcasting company donated us a panel truck that had a fold-out stage. And we provided that to the West Virginia Music Hall of Fame, who goes to every county in the state teaching children about our musical heritage. And they also are now giving out information about our car donation program in exchange for the truck. We also loan vehicles to nonprofits when they don't need to have a vehicle all the time, but just occasionally we loan them vehicles we have. And that really builds up a lot of community trust and support. Next slide, please. And I want to talk just briefly about the donation basics. Now, I've talked to you about what a poor state we are, and I truly believe if a donation program can work in West Virginia, I can't imagine why it couldn't work anywhere else. We have a yearly marketing plan, and we spend about $100,000 generally on the marketing of the vehicles, or the donation part, so that people will know that it's there and that we can pick up their car and they can get the best tax deduction possible. And sometimes we have state tax credits to sweeten the pot. But we get about 250 donations a year from West Virginia. And of those, we use about 160 to 180. Once we accept a donation, we send it through a thorough mechanical evaluation, top to bottom. And we pretty well know what all the repairs the vehicles need at that point. And we average about $900 per car for repair. But since they're donated, that's not that bad of an investment. We, too, will replace transmissions on newer cars if that's what's needed. We've actually swapped motors because as long as we can get a car on the road for a reasonable price that will last, reasonably expected to last 2 years, it's a good deal for our clientele as well as us. We test drive the car after we get it fixed. We have a state inspection, and it's determined to be reliable and safe. About 30% of the cars we get are not suitable for our clientele, or the repair costs are just too much. And we sell those at auction, public auction, or on eBay if it's a luxury car, and we use that money to supplement our operational costs. Next slide, please. The vast majority of our vehicles are provided to TANF programs and TANF program and DRS. We don't decide who gets the car. We did that at first, and it was too staff intensive, and it wasn't working very well. And as we tweaked the program, we decided that what would be best if the case manager would decide who was going to get a car. We only have 180 we do a year through TANF, so every county has a quota based on their TANF population. And so the case manager decides who's going to get the vehicle. And that is, some may say it's sort of creaming, but actually I think it's really contributed to our success, and that they're able to get people. And one of the things that West Virginia does with their program that's different from any that I know of in the country with TANF, they will actually send someone to get a vehicle so they can get to training. Usually people will only get cars if they have a job and ready to go to work. But the West Virginia Department has invested in training people, and we've had We have one person who got a car of ours about 6 years ago to go to LPN school, and she is now entering her PhD program in nursing at Vanderbilt. So they've made good investments. So once they decide who they're going to send for a car, we interview them, and we decide based on how far they have to drive, whether they need a four-wheel drive, how old their children are, whether they can be in the front seat or the back seat, etc. And we assign them the vehicle. They do not choose the vehicle. Once that is done and they get proof of insurance, we transfer the vehicle to the recipient. And the recipient also at that point receives a car orientation and maintenance course from our car staff. Next slide, please. At this point, this is something that was we had to sell the department with about our program. The vehicle becomes the property of the referred client. There's no charge for the vehicle to the client, and tax, title, and tag costs are included as a part of our grant. And this is a one-time shot for the person, but our average TANF payment, our top average payment of TANF per month is $421. So we said that there's just no way that someone could pay a car payment on that. And if they allowed someone this one chance to get what we considered a tool, that it's not a luxury to have a car in rural areas, it's a necessity, that they would be able to keep their insurance up and pay for their needed repairs. We warranty the car for 30 days or 1,250 miles, and we provide follow-up car repair services. And that is, TANF program here has a $1,500 life of their grant repair pool, and sometimes they still have that money. And I would say about half the people that get our cars have no one else in their family, or they don't know how to take care of a car or what kind of repairs that are reasonable. So those folks generally will keep in touch with our car staff, and they say, well, you know, I had this noise in my motor, and I took it to this garage, and they said I needed this with this and this work. And our car staff will call that garage and talk to them about, well, does it really need this? Have you checked this, etc. And that is, sometimes we've had people that have had our cars for 3 years who still use that service that we're glad to provide. And as I said, our hope is that these cars will last for 2 years, because we think that that's what it takes for someone to get on their feet after they've been so poor that they've been on public assistance. Next slide, please. And one of the things that people are looking at starting a donation program that targets the TANF population is, and the controversial thing that we had to deal with is, would we get enough cars, and what about this, giving these cars to people for no charge? And which is why our state had us do a pilot project. And you know, the questions that you see are what they asked us. And we had to get data to show after 2 years that our program worked. We've since collected more data that actually it's more successful now than it was then. But we did answer those questions. Yes, even in West Virginia, we could get quality donated cars. And yes, the people who got these cars did appreciate them. They took very good care of them. And they did use the cars to get to work or job training, and very few of them sold the cars. Next slide, please. This is our latest follow-up study, and it's really a remarkable success story, I think. 87% of people who've gotten our cars after 1 year were no longer on TANF. 9% were still on TANF, but they were in a training program, or there's a 6 months transitional stage of moving to employment. 4% were still receiving TANF and not making a move to become independent. Well, you know, and that's the important thing, and that's a major reason that we provide cars. But we also asked questions about other things that enhanced their life after they got the car. 36% were able to attend more school activities, same amount access better child care, 21% moved to better housing, and 31% access improved medical care. So all of those things contributed to the quality of life and actually ends up costing the state less, which is why our state has bought into this program. Next slide, please. There is also advantages to the donors, and there's a tax change that happened in 2005 that basically gave the donor the optimal tax deduction if they gave their vehicle to a program who repairs the vehicles and provides them to a low-income individual or family at reduced cost. And there's a lot of donation programs out there that sell the cars, and we're not, and they will say that's the best deduction you can get, but it's not true. If you give your car to someone that used it, then you can use fair market values. Our state also gives us tax credits that average about $500 to $600 per donor. But the biggest thing is the feeling that knowing that your vehicle will give a family the opportunity to, next slide please, have transportation to the work, take their children to school and extracurricular activities, medical school or medical service, etc., and to look for better employment and housing. And all the things that were said at the beginning of this, having a transportation when you haven't had any will improve your economic and life situation all the way around. Next slide, please. And these are just a few flip-through of people that have got our cars and a little bit of their stories. And I would just like you to look at those and read what they say about what this car has meant to them, and we'll have any questions afterwards. Just run all the slides through, please, Renee. Thank you. And what you're looking at here is thank you notes that our recipients had written to the donor.
Oh, you have them that go to that person that actually donated the car.
Yes. And
That's
one of the reasons we did this, and actually it came from the people that are getting the car, their idea, oh, will you tell this person thank you, thank you. And we decided, well, we'll just have blank thank you notes, and if they want to write something, they can. You know, they don't identify themselves particularly, but it really makes it connects the donor's gift to an actual person. And it is very, very popular with our donors, and a lot of times you donate something, it sort of goes in a black hole of need. And these are very concrete objects that are given to people with very concrete needs, and we hook them together. And please visit our website. There's a lot more information about our program on there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. And as with Don, Barbara has been generous enough to share with us her email address and, as she pointed out, her website, so that if you have questions about replicating this great activity, you can join in. Now, we have some time for some questions. As I mentioned to folks at the beginning, if you'd like to be recognized to answer, to ask a question, in your webinar box, you'll see a little hand symbol. And if you click on that, you will have your hand raised, and I'll recognize you, and you can answer a question. And I already see one person who's raised their hand, and I will click on them. Betty Newell, are you there? I see that she's not she didn't file her audio pin, so it's maybe hard for her to speak. Betty, can you hear me? Betty, if you can do us a favor and you can type in a question in the question box and I'll relate it down below. You'll see a box that says questions and you can type that in. In the meantime, I actually do have a question, one for that both Don and Barbara can answer. If you knew then what you know now, is there anything that you do differently than you did at the time? I know, Don, you started to talk about mechanics and buying better material. Would that be your answer? Is there anything else?
Well, that's certainly one of my answers. The program has really done very well for us. I would have liked a little more advertising from us on it. We did push some early on, and we got some good reviews, good TV time even from Columbus. But that was about the extent. We kind of relied on word of mouth from that point on. So the other thing is we're trying to be a little more aggressive with grants. So one of the grants we recently secured was the JARC grant, which is a Job Access Reverse Commute grant. And this allows us to take people who don't have cars to work, and we're also able to use that with people who do have cars that are in our repair shop to make sure that they continue to go to work with that grant. So going after grants, we relied, even though we expanded our program quite a bit and were able to survive because of that, nonetheless, we were really looking hard for other sources of funding to get back in and help more of the working poor.
Thank you. Barbara, how would you answer that question?
Well, when we started this program, I mean, it was sort of by the seat of our pants anyway, and so we did make a lot of mistakes. And one of the not a lot, but we made some. We tried having our own garage and our own mechanics, and that did not work out well because our cars are spread out all over the state, and the transportation of bringing them to a central location and then taking them back somewhere else made us doing our own repairs not cost efficient. So what we did to develop garages that we could work with was time consuming, but we did it, and I wish we'd have started on it sooner. Right now we've probably got 40 garages that we contract with across the state that do really good work for us, and they also contribute to their the garages jobs. We have a couple of garages that actually have a full-time mechanic that just works on our cars. So it also helps local communities with economic development.
Great. I did find, thank you, Betty, for typing in your question. Her question was for Don. It said he charges labor costs for his shop to do administration. Who pays for this administration, Don?
For any of the working poor, the TANF client, the PRC client, those families don't pay anything. We establish a rate so that we, one, for budgeting purposes, but when we started contracting with the county commissioners, the township, the cities, the various other nonprofit organizations such as our seniors and our veterans, while they do separate transportation, we repair their vehicles. We had to have a shop rate, and that's who we charge. So through a contract, we do their repairs, and they pay us for those repairs.
Don, this is John Molinaro. When you say you charge, you don't charge them, the way you pay for that mechanic is by the administrative funds that your county receives for TANF, correct?
Yes, and in Ohio, we have a system called the RMS, which means Random Moment Sample. There are 360 of those every quarter. Those go out. My two mechanics receive those, and what that is a random time and day comes to them. They have to fill out what they're doing at that time, and that's how I get my administrative fees or costs covered. So the mechanics are working on a PRC vehicle. They get that random moment. They would check, I'm fixing a PRC. That comes back up, and then that draws down my TANF dollars for that repair work.
Great. Thank you, Don. There's actually one other question for you here. What's the funding source for your help for seniors and other persons with disabilities?
That's the Workforce Investment Act dollars, the youth program. That's where we have the youth out there as trainees supervised by the qualified mechanics. And we will pull a senior's car in. The youth will do the work as on-the-job training. Because he needs a part to do that on-the-job training, we will purchase that part for him with his ITA funds. And the senior goes away with their car repaired, a new part, and no cost to them.
And Don, to be clear, this money is coming from the federal government, correct?
Federal Government Workforce Investment Act.
So right, so other folks you can access that money. There's a question that I think is for both Don and Barb. What steps, if any, did you take in relationship to liability issues? And are there any other things you should consider along those lines?
Well, we have a blanket liability policy with the Board of Risk Management, which is a state agency that allows nonprofits to join. And of the 1,300 plus cars that we provided, we've not had one issue. I think part of, besides getting good insurance, it's also making sure that you have checks and balances to make sure the car you give out is reliable and safe, and the repairs are done correctly.
Don,
not unlike Barbara's answer, there is a state risk-sharing insurance program called Corsa. We come under that program and are covered by it. We did have our county prosecutor research the liability. We do have disclaimer forms that allow us to drive the car and, do waiver for damages or anything like that. Of course, we're repairing them anyhow, so that's not a big deal. But it did cover us, and it wasn't an obstacle that was difficult to overcome at all.
I think people sort of overrate that as a barrier. I'm on an advisory board of low-income car programs called Opportunity Cars, and it's just not something that people, once they get into it and get the program set up, have to worry about if they do it right.
And I would agree with Barbara completely. Much overrated as a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
So that even if person that asked that question is from Minnesota, they'll likely have some sort of security from the state that'll help them be able to deal with that issue, or will be able to deal with it through your insurance companies.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Barbara, I wanted to ask you a question. Don had actually addressed this in his, but in terms of locally, have you had any concerns from local mechanics or used car sales folks about you siphoning business away from them? Or as Don said, he had kudos and support from the folks at the parts shops. How has that worked for you?
Oh, that's a good question, and when it goes back to what would I've done differently, I would have involved the Association for New Car Dealers earlier on. Now they're on board, because when they first started, I think they did see that we may be a threat. But the only people that tend not to like us are predatory car salespeople and lenders. We don't take people who can afford to get normal car financing, and our people most of our recipients have incomes below 50% of the poverty level, so we're not competing. And since we're now using contract garages, they like us because we're adding business to the community. I think that now the new car dealer people or car dealer people see that our program is giving people a step up to get them to the point where they may be able to afford to purchase their own car through traditional means.
Very good. And I just want to let folks know that if they want, they can still click on the hand there if they want to ask any questions. Someone did ask a question of us about joining the webinar late, and where will they be able to see the info from this program. Everyone who signed up to participate in this webinar will be sent an email, in fact, as will anyone else who's in the RuFES Action Network, letting them know where they can find the presentation. We have it on our Aspen CSG Community Strategy Group website. We will have that up by tomorrow morning in terms of having the recording from this webinar up, the presentations, and resources. So, for instance, you heard Barbara mention Opportunity Cars. We will have a link to that organization, which is a network of groups that are trying to get low-income people into cars and get them to work across the country. So you'll be able to find that information as well. Does anyone else have any questions out there? We just got one. Well, it's a comment from Betty Newell again. Their organization started providing down payments up to $1,500 for vehicles from local car dealers, but the high cost of the vehicles, the low quality of the vehicles, with no dealer support and the outrageous interest rates for buy here, pay here programs meant that over a third of our clients ended up losing their cars to repos. Then they found out about Vehicles for Change, which is another good resource, and use them now exclusively for car purchases. So there are a number of programs that are doing this around the country, so you'll be able to find them. Now, you live in a rural area. Like Don, you said that in your county you have very few businesses that are around, and yet the buy here, pay here people, are they funding your county residents as well?
Yes, and in fact, that's about the only thing that's left when the dealers closed, and we actually are hustling now to find a partner in that area again. About the only thing that's left is the buy here, pay here lots. And that's okay because the cars, it's not okay because of the predatory lending aspect of it that goes with that. They're usually paying way higher for the car than what it's worth. The flip side is those are cars we'll end up repairing, so.
Renee, this is John. Just for those on the call who aren't familiar with the buy here, pay here model, many of car dealers that focus on the low-income folks have a model where they go to the auctions and buy the cheapest cars money can buy that still look halfway decent. They bring them on their lots. The down payments that they charge in the cars usually cover the amount that they paid on the that they got paid for the car at the auction. And then they have this sophisticated computer program that helps them figure out how much money they can milk monthly for payments out of people, and they set them up on payments where ultimately they end up paying 2 or 3 or 4 times the cost of that car, based not on what the car is worth, but on what their computer program says that they can squeeze out of that person in payments. They usually also keep a duplicate set of keys for that car, and if somebody doesn't show up to make that payment, part of the stack of paperwork most buy here, pay here dealers put in front of someone when they buy the car is an undated voluntary repossession agreement. So they just put a date on that little form, and they go out and they in the middle of the night and they stick the keys in the ignition and they take it back and they sell it to some other unsuspecting customer. The average car that's sold by a buy here, pay here dealer is sold more than 4 times.
Yes, very upstanding citizens we're dealing with there.
Yeah, so those, if you've got those folks in your neighborhood, trying to help create some kind of an alternative is almost always a good thing.
And I recall in all of the consumer finance legislation that went past last year, those folks are not touched?
That's right. They and the automobile dealers in general, including the buy here, pay here industry, spent a phenomenal amount of money getting one of the few specific exemptions carved out to the consumer finance laws.
So those are folks we still have to worry about, everyone. We are getting close to the end of time. Right now I don't have any other questions in the queue. I wanted to quickly ask Don or Barbara if they had anything else they felt they needed to say or wanted to say.
Well, I want to encourage people to think about getting donated cars. We're hoping that if we have enough people that are nationally that are trying to get donated cars to refurbish and to provide to people who can't afford to buy cars in the traditional manners, that we can get more knowledge about our option out than people who take donated cars and sell them and use it for other, charitable things. But, the IRS found in a study that only 8 to 10% of the actual money that people were getting for their donated cars were going to the charities, and the rest were going to middlemen who often were former used car dealers. So, I think that people, we're 750,000 cars donated in the year 2001. I mean, it's a huge industry. And we are a small fledgling group that are trying to get more people to go out and get those cars and get people to donate them so they can be recycled and given to people who are poor so they can participate in our economic system.
Hey, Barbara, while you were mentioning that, a question came in for you from Randy from Wisconsin. And he asked, where does your $100,000 yearly marketing budget dollars come from, and are you planning to increase this expenditure? Where do you get your marketing dollars?
Our marketing dollars are come from the grant we get from TANF to provide 180 cars, and from the Division of Rehab Services contract. And basically, our average cost per car is about $4,500, and that means everything we do to get the car out the door, get it safe, get it repaired, all of our marketing, our staffing costs, our delivery. We actually deliver the cars to the recipients. We have 4 rollbacks. That is inclusive tax, title, and everything. And we can only do that because they're donations. But we use, we have a grant, and we have a budget, and we have a personnel line item, and we have a marketing item, and we're going to be doing about 260 cars this year, and we have a budget of about $1 million.
Okay,
so that's where it comes from.
And in your grant, were you required to specifically say how much you were going to spend on marketing?
Yes, we have to submit a marketing plan.
Great. Okay,
we do newsletters, we advertise on the radio, but, that's all in our plan. We do every year.
Okay, so that's something that folks ought to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Don, is there anything else that you wanted to share before we let everyone go?
Well, I would love to do more marketing, but it seems that I can only find that free stuff, and that's worked for us, though. We don't have a radio station. We have a daily or 1 day a week paper, so it's a weekly paper, and we don't have a TV station, so it's very difficult for us to get the word out for our program. But it's amazing how that group of folks that are qualified for it pass the word pretty good. I did have a question for Barbara, and then I do have a parting illustration, because the question for Barbara was, do you have an idea of what the value of those cars are, what they're worth that you are investing $4,500 in by the time you get them out? Are they worth more than that, or are you about breaking even on that part of it?
I think any car that will last 2 years is worth at least $4,500, and
okay.
And that's our benchmark. And when I say $4,500, that is every cent we have to operate this program, and is what goes into that car. One of the places that we got a lot of support, and we still get support that doesn't cost us anything, is, as I stated, the Council of Churches in West Virginia is one of our founding members. And we work with churches a lot, and we send newsletters, and we have bulletins that the churches use. And that was, in rural areas, that's still a major communication forum is with the faith community. And we also work with schools a lot. There are ways that you can get the word out about your program without spending a lot of marketing dollars. And I've seen different programs in the country use different methods. But since we're statewide, that's what we do.
Okay.
You know, and another is just real quickly about the $4,500 per car. You know, most of the time, at the end of those 2 years, the car is still worth something, and some people can use that car if they've had stable employment for a trade-in for another used car.
Absolutely, yeah.
Barbara, while you were speaking, we had a question come in for you from Steve from Virginia, and he asks, is the marketing plan you just mentioned done primarily as a requirement to 501c3 status? Says, I see the benefit to fitting it in the budget, but I'm trying to work my way through the tax-exempt status hurdles, and they ask about marketing in the application. How did marketing affect your 501c3 status? Positively or negatively?
It did not affect it at all. Actually, when we got our 501c3, we didn't have that much marketing dollars. You know, United Way spends marketing dollars to get word out about their program. Most nonprofit agencies that operate on donations have to spend marketing money. So as long as we use the gains of that marketing to help low-income folks, it doesn't affect our 501c3 status at all. It's not like a profit-making thing for us. It's flipped right back over to benefit low-income people.
And this is John. In partial answer to Steve's question, that question in the 501c3 application is largely so that the IRS can figure out whether or not you're actually going to be out there trying to get contributions in the door by marketing your activities, or customers in the door by marketing your activities. So you don't necessarily have to have a huge marketing program to meet that requirement. You just have to have something credible in there about how you're going to get whatever scale you're going to operate on, how you're going to get the word out about what you're doing and get the word out to potential funders.
Thank you for those words, John. We are coming to the end of our time. I would like to thank Don, and I'd like to thank Barbara for sharing about their programs. I'd like to thank our co-director, John, for giving us the basic framework. I'd like to thank Elsa Noderman, who has been invaluable in this process and helping us put this together. And I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for these webinars. This webinar and all of the others before. We will be sending you a questionnaire shortly. It's really helpful for us if you fill out the questionnaire and let us know what we can do to improve these webinars and what we do that you already like. And also, if you have ideas for more webinar topics, we are certainly open to those. CSG will continue to do webinars on an occasional basis. And once again, you should look soon in your email boxes for notice of the posting of this webinar, the PowerPoint, and of the resource page. So thanks a lot, everyone, and everyone have a great afternoon.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye now.